Hi, I'm Daniel Findling with Findling Law and thedivorceguy.com, and I'd like to welcome you to this video webinar on determining income in a Michigan divorce or child custody matter. And we're really talking about two instances when we need to determine income. That is in calculating child support and in calculating alimony or spousal support in a divorce case. And what I hope you're going to learn from this video webinar is that determining income is much more than what's reported on the tax returns. Let's take a closer look. Determining income isn't always easy. In fact, sometimes it's hard. The 2021 Michigan Child Support Formula Manual gives us some tools that we can look at and evaluate in how to determine income for child support purposes. And many of these same tools can be used in determining income for alimony. Don't worry, you don't have to have the manual in front of you. But if you want it, you can simply Google search 2021 Michigan Child Support Formula Manual, and you can look at it while I'm going through this webinar. Now, I told you really don't need to do it. Why? Because in the remainder of this webinar, I'm going to walk through the important sections of the Child Support Formula Manual and provide you more information than the manual has about understanding how to determine income. Let's get started. Section 2.01 of the Michigan Child Support Formula Manual discusses the two major sources of income. First is income from an employer, whether it's a W-2 or even if you're an outside contractor and you receive a 1099. The second is income from business. That's usually a little bit harder to ascertain what income is. Sometimes it's 1099 income, other times it's a K-1 distribution, or in closely held corporations, it may be, well, you receive benefits in exchange for working in the business. So when it comes to determining income, we look first at what's easy. What are the W-2s? What's on the tax returns, right? Then we look a little bit deeper. Let's take a look at other sources of income, and then we'll come back to determining income for self-employed individuals, and especially if you're a business owner. When we talk about looking beyond the tax returns, 2.01c3 starts to bring some insight into what we mean by that. Whether it's distributed profits, retirement, a pension plan, or even deferred compensation, all of these sources of revenue may not be reflected on a tax return, but certainly are income for child support or spousal support purposes. Hopefully you're getting a broader understanding of what is income for child support and spousal support purposes. Would you ever imagine that rations or housing in the military is considered income? Well, under Section 4 it is. And under Section 5 we learned that even gambling winnings that may never reach a tax return could be considered income, as well as tips for child support and spousal support. 2.01c provides a laundry list of what's income. Capital gains, if you sold stock and you receive capital gains, interest income, and even adoption subsidies are income for child support purposes. If you've loaned somebody money and you receive it back, very often that could also be considered income for child support and spousal support purposes. Now this is getting a little bit more interesting when we talk about income, because perks, whether it's a car allowance, whether it's paid vacation time off, can also be considered income for purposes of child support and alimony, health insurance benefits paid for by your employers, perks and other types of benefits that you receive independent of your income, independent of the 1099, the W-2, or for that matter, a K-1 distribution, can be determined income for purposes of child support. So during the course of discovery, when we're trying to establish what is the nature, the extent of the estate, we're also going to ask questions pertaining to other forms of income. Section 2.01e talks about income for self-employed individuals and business owners. Now, we discussed self-employed individuals in some earlier slides, and as a general proposition, it's a lot easier to determine income for a self-employed individual. Why? Well, because they get a 1099, we look at the tax returns from the 1099, and then we add back any perks or prerequisites, whether it's a car allowance or otherwise, or even the expenses that they take off on their Schedule C, and we can add that back into income. But for a business owner, they control the books and records, and they report to the IRS what they determine as income for purposes of taxes. Oftentimes, if not the majority of times, income for tax purposes is very different and lower than income for alimony or spousal support purposes. So while 2.01e talks about a lot of strategies, it's not uncommon to hire a business valuation expert to help us differentiate that, because you have to do some forensics. You have to look not only at the business tax returns, but also at the books and records of the business to help determine, well, first, what is the value of the business? If there's a marital portion, of course, a lawyer is going to want to divide that. And second, what is available income for child support or spousal support purposes? Now, for smaller estates, we can work without a business valuation expert. We certainly have enough experience and handled enough of these cases. But for larger estates, when we have a business that generates significant revenue or significant perks, oftentimes we're going to want to utilize a forensic expert or a business valuation expert to help us determine income for child support or spousal support purposes. And trust me, it can make a very big difference. Section 2.01F deals with alimony. For purposes of child support, do you consider alimony payments a deduction in determining your income? And the answer has changed. In older judgments, alimony paid by the payor was tax deductible, and to the recipient it was considered income, so the answer would be yes. But under the 2021 Michigan Child Support Formula Manual, if you're paying alimony to your former spouse, that is, in this case, the case that we're dealing with right now, it is not a reduction of income for child support purposes. However, if you're paying alimony to someone other than your spouse, maybe you're divorced twice, and you have an alimony payment from your first marriage, that is a reduction of income. Section 2.01G of the Michigan Child Support Formula Manual deals with potential income. Let me explain what that is. There's basically two types of situations where we consider potential income. The first is when there's an unexercised ability to earn income, and the second is when there's an underexercised ability to earn income. The Michigan Court of Appeals has held in many cases that in both circumstances it may be appropriate to impute potential income. Well, let's talk about the differences. An unexercised ability to earn income is simply you've decided that you're not going to work, or you don't want to get a job, but you could work, you're just choosing not to. An underexercised ability to earn income is when you're not working at your full potential. Think of a physician who during the divorce decides to start working at McDonald's so they don't have to pay so much child support or alimony. In both situations, a court can say, well, for determining child support or alimony, we're going to determine your potential income, or we're going to impute income, even if you're not making money, for purposes of calculating child support and alimony. Now, how do we do that? Well, the Michigan Child Support Formula Manual gives us certain considerations that you can look at in more detail. But from a legal standpoint, we often want to employ a vocational expert. That is somebody who's qualified in maybe interviewing an individual and determining the types of employment and the income available to that individual. It is oftentimes, in fact, I might say more often than not, very important to employ a vocational expert to help support the notion that your spouse is not working because they don't want to, or is choosing to work at a position that they're not qualified to do, and therefore we should impute more income to him or her. A vocational expert can be very helpful in helping us to determine the amount of potential income that should be utilized, and it can have a big impact on the amount of child support or spousal support paid. Section 2.01H of the Michigan Child Support Formula Manual discusses gifted and inherited property. And for the most part under Michigan law, gifted or inherited property, even if it was acquired during the course of the marriage, is separate property and not divided. But the interest earned from that gifted or inherited property is income. So if you were lucky and you inherited $5 million and it's generating $75,000 a year in interest, well, guess what? That $75,000 is going to be income for purposes of calculating child support and spousal support. Now, government benefits for the most part are income. There's a little asterisk as it relates to Social Security. We can consider it for alimony, and sometimes we can consider it for child support, but it depends if it's means tested or not. It's a little bit more complicated than I want to get to in this webinar. But retirement proceeds, if you're receiving a 401k distribution or a pension, that is income for purposes of child support and spousal support. Sections 2.01K and 2.01L provide clarification of this complicated topic of which government benefits are includable as income and which government benefits are not includable in income. For example, veterans disability benefits, I can probably do an entire webinar on when they're included and when they're not included. It's a very complicated subject. I've certainly written a couple of blogs on that. Now, when it comes to 2.01M, it's important to understand this is almost out of place. This deals with the notion that travel expenses and other types of perks are includable in income. It's sort of a catch-all. It's important to understand that this is a non-exhaustive list. With the Michigan Child Support Formula Manual in section 2.01, it says, think about these things. This is what you should look at. But an experienced attorney knows better. We first look at the tax returns, and then we ask important questions that's going to help our client maximize or minimize, as the case may be, their exposure for alimony and child support. Now, I hope you found meaning and you learned something today about determining income in Michigan divorce and child support matters. And I hope you have questions, because if you do, I'm available for you along with my team. I provided you my contact information below, and I want to invite you to contact me, whether it's by phone or by email. Now, this video webinar is one of dozens of video webinars on Michigan divorce, custody support, alimony, whatever it is. It's part of a series I call the Michigan Divorce Education Series. Let it be our privilege to help you. I'm Daniel Findling with Findling Law and thedivorceguy.com. Thanks for watching. And once again, I want to invite you to call us, give us your questions, and let us help you navigate your situation.